Editing Shay here. I just wanted to pop in and apologize for the view of the camera in this video. I set it up and I am currently using my cell phone with the back camera for the better quality on it. So I don't have a viewfinder. So I set it up and I was like, that looks good. And then I recorded an hour and 20 minutes worth of video footage and I didn't realize that the camera was positioned the way it is. So I apologize, but there's nothing we can do about it. So I guess we're all just gonna have to live with it. Okay, thanks. Bye.
I'm going to need you both to chill out. Hello, friends, and welcome back to my channel. Tonight, it is 9:44 p.m. because I tried to get the videos that I recorded last time to upload to my computer, but I'm not very tech savvy, so we're having issues with that. So I guess we're just recording more. Okay. So today we will be talking about A Court of Mist and Fury, or ACOMAF, or also known as, the second book in the ACOTAR series. We're going to go with, so my initial thoughts, this one, much better. I honestly really enjoyed this one. So in the last one, like I knew, I have watched reviews on it, so I knew it was going to happen. I knew that they had to go under the mountain, and I knew that they had to be tormented by Amarantha, and like I was waiting the whole book for when she goes under the mountain and all this terrible trauma happens to her. And it was like the last, I don't know, we're going to be generous and say 50 pages of the book, the last of them. And it's, I don't even know how long. Alexa, how long is A Court of Thorns and Roses?
The book A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas is 448 pages long. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thanks for your feedback.
So 400 and whatever fucking amount of pages that she said. So for like, I don't know, 390 pages or more, you're waiting for it to get good. It's just like establishing a relationship between her and Tamlin, which isn't even, like, I didn't feel it. Which, I mean, in this book, you figure out why. So, according to Mr. ACOMAF, we're just going to use acronyms. Alexa, what's an acronym? Alexa.
An acronym is a word created from the initial letters of a phrase. It
Alexa.
is pronounced as a single word and is
Alexa.
used as an abbreviation to represent a name, organization, or phrase. Examples include NATO.
Alexa, stop. Okay, just checking to make sure that I was right. We're just going to use acronyms. Hello. We're just going to, please don't lick towards my face near the microphone. Thank you. It is late and it is bedtime for this one and this one. I don't know if you can see this one because this one is little. Or, well, she's not little, like young. She's small. This is the young one. But apparently this is just where he's going to lay for the video. That's fine. So ACOMAF opens with Rhysand on the battlefield. And he's searching the bodies of dead warriors, Illyrian and otherwise, looking for his two best friends. The men who are like his brothers. I'm going to say men. They're fairies. Obviously, they all are. But for the two men that are like his brothers, and he does not find them. So then it's like a prequel or whatever. And then Feyre. Then it goes to Feyre, and she's hanging out with Tamlin again. Yep. They are now engaged to be married. We are not going to play right now, so you can calm that mouth right down. And she's having a lot of nightmares, which Tamlin chooses to ignore. Because you can't tell me that if she's screaming in the night from these nightmares that he's not hearing them, and that he doesn't know that she's experiencing this, and he just like pretends like it doesn't exist, which don't even get me started on that. So you meet Ianthe, and She's one of the 12 of the high priestesses of Prithian, and she's planning the wedding. She's planning their wedding. Which is all that Feyre gets to do. She doesn't get to leave the house or go to the village or go on rides with Lucian. Like, she doesn't get to do anything. And Tamlin's like, it's to protect you. So her and Ianthe are planning the wedding, and Ianthe picks the most hideous dress, which, I mean, surprise. Bless you. Excuse you. That was weird. So Feyre's like walking down the aisle for her wedding. And she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then she looks at Tamlin and she doesn't feel what you're supposed to feel on your wedding day. She doesn't feel what I felt on my wedding day. Like, it's very, no, I was not in my head begging for someone to come and rescue me. Because up until this point, Mr. Rhysand has not made good on his promises to come and take her for a week every month. So she's like in her head begging, please, please, someone help me, or whatever. And then I don't remember exactly. I want to say he like doors open all dramatically and he walks in. Or that's how I see it in my head, but I'm pretty sure that what actually happened is he just like appears behind her and says, hello, Feyre darling, which everybody's like, oh my god. I'm so sorry. Anyway, he's like, guess what? I'm here. He's like, guess what? It's time to come make good on your promise and do what you said you would do when I fixed your arm and saved your life. So what we're gonna do, and he's like, I'm taking her now. And Tamlin's like, all right, whatevs. He doesn't try to stop him or anything. So they get there and he's like, you can go upstairs and take a bath and rest and nobody will bother you for the rest of the night. And he brings her to the townhouse. And so she walks away and she can hear someone giving him shit. Because their exchange is like vicious. She's not happy about being there because she's very Stockholm syndrome as far as like, she thinks she's in love with Tamlin because Tamlin's the only person who's ever shown her any affection, but also she didn't want to marry him, but she doesn't realize what that means in her brain. Why are you in the couch? Please get out. You can't stick your face in the cushions. And she doesn't realize who he is as a person yet. But so she goes upstairs and finds the most giant, glorious bathtub I've ever seen in my entire life. And I love it. I'm going to smush you if you don't get out from behind me. No, sir. So, the next morning, she meets Morgan, and Morgan's like, hi, I'm Morgan. I am Rhys's cousin, and we are going to be best friends in the whole wide world. And her and Rhys have a long conversation where he's like, she's like, what do you want from me? And he's like, I would like you to learn to read and write. And also shield your mind. I don't know if they did that yet. I don't think they do that yet. He does want her to read and write. So Rhysand and her, yes, he insists that she learn to read and also shield her mind, because she's screaming at him through the link in the bond, on her hand. I forgot about the fucking eye. That's why I keep looking at the palm of my hand. I forgot about the eye. So the tattoo on her left arm, or whatever arm it is, I think it's her left arm, that shows that they're bonded through the I'm saved your life. Hey, sir. No, sir. I saved your life, so now you have to spend a week every month with me. Has an eye on her hand that he can see her with, I believe. I don't know if it's ever expressly said that he can see her with that hand. No, sir. So they're meant to link. She meets Morgan. Rhys informs Feyre that he does not like Ianthe and the reasons why. I don't think he goes into detail, but I think that he expresses to her that she is forceful and tried to get him to tried to coerce him into having sexual relations. And he tells her that war is coming and that the wall that separates the mortal world from the fairy realm is in danger of being broken. Because the King of Hybern would like to reclaim the mortal lands for his own, which he lost in the first battle. And Rhys wants Feyre to find out if Tamlin will fight with the Night Court if it comes to it. He also tells her that he thinks that she might have special abilities because she was brought to life by all 7 High Lords. Spring, autumn. Yeah, 7. Spring, autumn, winter, summer, day, night, and dawn. 7. All 7 High Lords. No, sir, we're not doing that. So he also thinks that she needs to learn how to use these powers that he thinks that she's going to have. And so add that to the laundry list of things he wants to do, including learn to read and also learn how to shield her mind. So they're discussing things like that, and then Morgan shows up and is like, the temple at Caesar? That's not right. There's a temple. There's a temple where high priestesses live that's been attacked. And all of the priestesses were slain, and that Azriel and Cassian believe it to be rogue Illyrian clans, so Rhysand leaves to meet them, and Feyre returns to the Spring Court, where Tamlin and Lucien immediately interrogate her about her time at the Night Court. So they immediately interrogate her about her time at the Night Court. Like, she doesn't get to eat, she doesn't get to sleep, she doesn't get to do anything other than be interrogated. And so they interrogate her. They eat supper. While she's eating supper, she accidentally enters Lucian's mind. And so that means she also is a Daemati, which is what Rhysand is. He explains to her that's how he can get into people's minds. No, sir. Okay, you're going to have to get down. You're going to have to back it up. You're going to have to... So her and Lucien have a conversation at one point where she is upset because of the way that Lucien just defends Tamlin and things. Like, she asks him to help her, allow her to leave the house. She's like, I want to go out hunting. What's wrong with me going hunting with you again? We had so much fun doing it before. Why won't he let me leave? And Lucian's like, you have to understand that it was really hard for him. Even though I would argue that it was more hard for Lucien to watch her die, considering that I believe in the first book you find out that Lucien was in love with we'll go with like common girl, and his very terrible father, Baron, not that they weren't willing, but made his older brothers hold him down while they killed her and made him watch. So nobody was able to do anything underneath the mountain until after Amarantha killed Feyre. So can you imagine how terrible that was for him? For him. I mean, it's also good for her, but... Okay. So then, all this happens over the course of the rest of the month. Comes time for Rhysand to come get her again, and Tamlin's like, you can't have her. And then he, threatens to asks to buy her out of her contract, and, he obviously does not accept it, because you learn that, at the end of ACOTAR, when Rhys looks at her weird before he disappears, it's because they have a mate bond. He is her mate. And the mate bond snapped into place for him. When it snaps into place for him and he realizes it doesn't also do the same thing for her, I don't know. That part of it doesn't really have any logical sense to me. Like, the mate bonds themselves weren't very clearly thought out, because I feel like in most situations when you have a mate bond, both of them feel it. So, I don't know. It just seems odd to me. So she goes to the Night Court for another week, and Rhys notices that she's lost weight and is an unemotional shell. But her reading and mind shielding has improved because she's been working on that while she's been away from him. So then she gets sent back, and Tamlin doesn't allow her to train or use her powers, and Lucian agrees, and Lucian agrees that she should be taught, and him and Tamlin fight about it. So Tamlin doesn't allow her to be trained. He is convinced that it will put her at risk. Tamlin's like, everything will be fine. Look, I bought you some new paints. And they get in a fight, and he uses his power, like his power uncontrollably explodes out of him, and it turns, like, it's like a huge, huge trunk just full of paints. Okay, so there's this huge, he buys her this huge huge trunk of paints, and he's like, this will make it better. Just stay in the house and paint, Feyre. Don't leave. And she tries to tell him how she feels, and he, of course, gets mad about it, and his power unleashes out of him uncontrollably, and everything explodes. And when everything explodes, she's like, oh, but he shielded me from harm. And she realizes that he did not shield her. He was fine with her blowing up along with everything else. That he didn't shield her, she shielded herself. And she goes to bed, and she goes through the next couple weeks just remembering. And he's like, I'll make love to you and it'll make everything better. You don't need to leave the house, and you don't need to be upset that I destroyed the paint. This part was really hard for me. I listened to it on audio instead of like getting the physical book. And the level of gaslighting that he does after the I'm going to destroy things, and then I'm going to tell you that I love you and I'm so sorry and I didn't mean to hurt you, was very hard for me because my ex was never physically abusive, but he would tell me that it was all my fault, and then various other gaslighting things. We're going to cut that out. But he was very good at gaslighting and treating me terrible and, unresolved trauma. So that part was really, really hard for me to listen to. Along with, so in the middle of the last time she went to the night court and now, and in between when she came back, when it's time for her to go again, she wanted to go with him and Lucian, I don't know, do something. It's not important. And she asks if she can go, and she's like, clearly I will be safe if I have Lucian and I have you. I will be safe. And Tamlin tells her no. And then he uses like an air shield to lock her in the house, even though her trauma is massively stemmed from being trapped under the mountain, unable to escape. He traps her inside of the house, unable to escape. And so she's inside freaking out, and she unleashes power, and it's like shadow and fire and all kinds of stuff in this swirl around her. And she hears voices, and she hears Alice's voice, and she hears a voice that sounds familiar, and she knows it's comforting, and she knows that she can trust it. So she lets her guard down, and she is basically catatonic, and she hears Alice tell the person whose arms she gets picked up into something like, keep her safe, or something like that. It was really cute. I wonder if I wrote it down. Did I write it down? She does realize that the person who came into the house and rescued her was the Morrigan. She came and she rescued her, and she takes her to like a place outside. I think it's outside the barrier of Springcourt, or it's just like outside of where Tamlin can feel him. it's got to be outside the barrier of the Supreme Court. And so Moore winnows them to Reese, and then Reese takes her to the night court and to the so they like appear in Valaris in the townhouse, and they're there for a very short time, and then you hear two voices knocking on the door and yelling all kinds of fun shit at Reese, and it's Azrael and Cassian, and he's like, if you don't want to deal with them, go upstairs. And then you hear Amren's voice in the background, who's like, wonderful. So she goes upstairs, and they come in, and they're like giving him all kinds of shit. And then she spends a little bit of time there. He's like, you're free to walk around Valaris and see everything that you want to see. And then he's like, but I would like... So she's like, what do we do now? And he's like, well, I could bring you in and you can meet some people and we can let you help us. But if I bring you in and we let you help us, you either can't go back to the Supreme Court, or when you go back to the Supreme Court, you can't tell them anything. You can't tell them a single thing that you see or that happens here, because I have to protect my people. Okay, so they go to the House of Wind, and she meets Moore and Cassian and Azrael and Amren. He explains Amren as a strange creature that once had a different body, kind of like Feyre. So, like Feyre, she was made entirely new, and so he's like, if you meet them and you like them, you can help us, but you have to in turn protect them. And she's like, I think I can do that. And so she agrees. She says, I like them. Let's do this. I want to help you stop the King of Hybern. Let's do it. So they need to know what the King of Hybern's up to. So Rhysand is like, I'll take you to meet the Bone Carver, because I think that he will give you what you want. But just so you know, the prison that the Bone Carver is trapped in is also under a mountain. So she's like, I don't think I'm ready for that. So they get ready to go. And she's like, I'm not ready for that. So they wait like a week. And then she's finally ready, because Amren's like, here's this amulet, this pretty amulet. And it is the reason that I escaped. And so if you have it, you will escape from down there too. And so they go, and he's like, I don't know what the Bone Carver is going to look like to you. The Bone Carver looks different to every single person. And so they get to the prison, and Rhysand looks at the amulet and like looks back at her, and he's like, that's Amren's. And she's like, I know. So the Bone Carver confirms that Durian is to be reborn using the eye that Amarantha kept around her neck. The King of Hybern is collecting a magical cauldron and its missing feet. And that they need the Book of Breathings, which will tell them wholly how to control the cauldron. So with this cauldron, they can shatter the wall that separates the Fae from the Mortal Lands from Feyre's family. He tells them that long ago the book was ripped into two, and it was given half to the Supreme Court and half to the Mortal Queens to keep it separated and to keep it safe. That with it, they can nullify the powers of the cauldron. And so they decide that they're going to start their search by going to the Mortal Lands and writing to the queens. They go to the Mortal Lands, and she's like, I think it would be good if you guys let me try it. Nest is like, you want us to have fairies in our fucking house? Really? And she's like, fine. So Elaine asks all of the servants and all of the help to go home early, have like an extended vacation with their families. So it takes them a short time, and then the three men, Nassian, Azrael and Cassian and Reese. I'm like, who's the third guy? And Reese appear. And Elaine is very welcoming because she's Elaine. And then Nesta's not, because she's Nesta. Nesta's very, very willing to point out the fact that Elaine is engaged to a mortal man now, and that her mortal fiance and his family hate fairies. To prove this, she's like, Elaine, show them your engagement ring. And Elaine's like, look at my pretty iron engagement ring, because all of the humans think that iron has an effect on the fairies. And it's super shitty. So they write to the Mortal Queens, and the Mortal Queens, of course, don't respond. So, while they're there, because they stay for a couple days to see if the queens will respond right away, which of course they don't because they're queens. Um, so while they're in the Mortal Lands, she tells Reese, "I want to go practice trying with my powers and stuff." Um, and it's really funny because he's like keeps winnowing. Winnowing is like you can think of something and like appear. He explains it with like, so you have 2 points on it, like a piece of paper, and you crinkle the piece of paper together, so you just kind of step from one place to the other. So like it could be from me to the other end of my couch, or it could be from the town that I live in to a town 300 miles away. You just have to know the other point to where you are going. So you start here, you know where you're at. Obviously, you have to know exactly where you're going, and then you can just kind of like fold the fabric of reality and step through. And so she is really jealous that he knows how to winnow and she can't. And it's really funny because she just thinks about how much she really wants to punch him in the face. And then all of a sudden she's winnowing and she like knocks him out. Anyway. And then there's like a whole, they kiss or something. I don't think they kiss yet or not. I don't think they kiss yet. And their love story is also not great. Anyway, so she's like, I feel nervous. I can't do this with you here. So he's like, that's fine. I'll just go away. Where do you want me to go? And she's like, I want you to go into that little pocket realm where you store shit. And he's like, I can't go in the pocket realm because I can't breathe. And she's like, okay, definitely go in the pocket realm. And he laughs, but he leaves. And while she is practicing things, she all of a sudden is grabbed by hands, and a voice is in her ear, and she realizes that it's the Adder, which is a terrible, awful person he works technically for the King of Hybern, but he was under the mountain with Amarantha. He was once in the employ of Amarantha. He attempts to kidnap her, and then all of a sudden, kapow, there's Reese and Azrael ready to whoop some ass. So Az takes him and gets information from him, which is that the King of Hybern is on the move, but on the movie, and is going to try to invade the Mortal Realm and also the rest of Prithian soon. I'll probably skip the Mortal Realm. That he is going to try to invade the rest of Prithian soon. And that he also wants Feyre. And, oh, yeah, I also threw on here that while the thing that distracted her was she was thinking about her sisters and what her sisters will look like when they age and she doesn't. And that's when the Adder grabs her, which is foreshadowing. So, Azrael, when they return home, Az continues to try to use his spy network. He continues to use his spy network to try to reach the Mortal Queens. Like, he's trying to break into their castle and stuff. So Feyre decides it's time to start training both her fighting skills as well as her new magic, and she slowly learns to use all of her new skills and come to terms with what happened to her under the mountain. Later, so Reese is like, I'm going to reach out to Tarquin. I was like, what was his name again? To Tarquin and see if we can go to the summer court. And he's like, we're going to go and we're going to find that first half of the book because we can't do shit with the Mortal Queens until they agree to let us in. So Reese is like, me, Feyre, and Amren, we're going to go. And they meet Lord Tarquin and Princess Cressida. And also, I gotta find this. Hold on. Hold, please. Varian. I had to Google it. So, they meet Cressida and Varian, who are the prince and princess of the Summer Court. So, they're like, how are we gonna do this? And Reese is like, well, you gotta get close to Tarquin. You gotta make him like you. So, she does. So, they spend like a few days there. And she flirts with Tarquin the whole time, but she realizes that she really likes him and she thinks that he would be a good friend. And she tells him it would be really easy to love him. And she can like feel something weird from the bond with Reese, because Reese is like, oh, I just grabbed the microphone. And Reese is like, did you mean it when you told Tarquin that he would be really easy to love? And she's like, yeah, I did, but he's not the person that I want. So they like little flirty flirts here and there. So they discover where the book is and they steal the book. Not very successfully steal the book. And so they go home and Amren gets to work on decoding the book. And because Amren looks at the book and she's like, I can read this, but I have to decode it first, because they're like, nobody knows this language. But Amren is the only person old enough to understand the language. So she's got to decode it first and then she can read it. So she goes to do that. Tarquin sends them blood rubies, a blood ruby for her, a blood ruby for Amren, and a blood ruby for Reese, which is them like declaring war. It's like on sight, homie. If I see you again, you're dead. On sight. And so they're like, well, cool. Now the summer court hates us. It's fine. So Feyre continues to train and Amren tries to decode the book. And they're also waiting to hear from the Mortal Queens because they need both halves of the book. So they finally hear back, and the entire inner circle travels back to Feyre's family home to meet with them. At first, the queens refuse to allow them to see the book. Morgan shares with them the facts of what will happen if Hybern breaks the wall and invades. And she agrees, and Morgan's like, you know who I am. I am the Morgan. Like, I fought with your people before, and you know that my gift is truth, and why won't you believe me? And so their condition is that they need to see proof that Rhysand is not the monster that he's rumored to be. So the queens leave. And Feyre learns about Miriam, and how Miriam is a half human, half fae, who was Jurian's lover, but she fell in love with another fae named Draken. And after the war and Jurian's defeat by Amarantha, Miriam and Draken, who were believed to be dead, snuck away and started a new life where humans and fae could live together peacefully. So Rhys decides that to use for his proof to show the queens that he is not the monster they believe, that he will show them Valaris, because they have only heard about the Court of Nightmares and not Valaris, the City of Starlight, which has been hidden and kept secret for like 5,000 years. And Rhys is like, I'm going to give them this little secret. That has been a secret for 5,000 years. 5,000 years. What is wrong with you? So, in order to do this without bringing them to Valaris, which would be dumb AF, they need to use an orb containing truth magic that they'll steal from the Court of Nightmares. They'll steal from Mor's dad, who is like, he's like the steward of Gondor, but for the Night Court. And he's also as shitty as Denethor. So it works out. It's a good comparison. He's the steward of Gondor, but the steward of the Night Court. He's like the steward of the Night Court, and Morgan runs the Night Court. Like, she's like the big boss daddy when Rhys isn't there. Anyway, so they decide to go, and Rhys is like, I'm gonna need you to not go with. And Feyre's like, but I want to go with, and you told me that you would never make me stay somewhere, do things that I don't want to do, like Tamlin was doing to me, so I want to go. And he's like, the things that I'm going to have to do, it's going to be like when we were under the mountain. I'm going to have to be that person that I was under the mountain, and I don't know if I like you seeing me like that. And she's like, do it anyway. So they show up. Craziness ensues. So that happens. They're putting on a show to distract Keir, Morgan's dad. And Az steals the orb, and then Az sneaks into the back of the chamber room and is like, and so then they're like, and I've had enough of this. But then Keir gets lippy, so he proceeds to break a bunch of his bones. Because Keir, under his breath, calls Feyre a whore. And that word triggers Rhys, because Rhys just spent the last 50, 100, how long was Amarantha in charge? However long, 100 years, 50 years, something like that, being called Amarantha's whore. And so that word itself triggers him a lot, and he doesn't allow it. So he breaks Kier's bones, and it's really funny. So then, at some point, Reese gets attacked by ash arrows from the ground as he flies, and he avoids them. But that's how they realize that he's being tracked when he uses powerful magic. So the group travels to an Illyrian war camp. So Reese has to avoid using magic, and Feyre and him still go and train. And one day while they're training, Feyre learns that Tamlin's family killed Rhysand's mother and sister, and in return, Rhysand's father killed Tamlin's whole family. And Feyre realizes, because Tamlin was like, I don't like Rhys because he killed my mom and my dad and shit. And you learn that, like, it's messy because Tamlin was there when his dad tortured and killed Rhys's mother and sister. Mother and sister? Mother and sister. And you learn that Tamlin's dad stole their wings because his mother and his sister were Illyrians, just like he is. And you learn that Rhys went with his dad to go and exact revenge on Tamlin's dad by killing them. And Rhys is like, I told him that I would help him kill his dad to get vengeance for my mother and my sister, but I was very clear that I didn't want Tamlin's mom to be touched. I wanted her to be safe. And he didn't care, and he ignored that, and he killed her anyway. And he was going to kill Tamlin, and Rhys killed him. And so it was like this weird thing where, like, Tamlin and Rhys became High Lords at the same time. Like, they watched. Because it's like when the High Lord is murdered or dies or whatever, then you get, like, imbued with the power of being the High Lord. So they were standing there across the threshold from each other when they both became High Lords. And it's all complicated. It's all complicated. So Lucien, one day when they're training, Lucien appears and is like, Feyre, come back to the Spring Court with me. He's like, you have to come back. Tamlin has lost his mind since you've left. So he sends them on their way, and they decide to travel away from them for the night. And there's like this whole thing where they get stuck in a bed together. Anyway, not much ensues. They're like in a hostel in the middle of nowhere because he's got to fly her. They can't winnow because if he uses magic, he's being tracked. But it doesn't matter because they have this whole moment where they want to tell each other how they feel while they're in the one bed together, and then they don't. So then he's thinking about it while he's got her in his arms, flying her back to the Illyrian camp, and he gets shot out of the sky with arrows. He takes 7 poisoned ash arrows in his wings and several in his legs, and they're separated because Rhys, like, shoots her away and then drops out of the sky intentionally to go try to, like, kill them. And so Feyre finds him, and she figures out that his captors are from Hybern, and it's really fucking cool how she kills them all. She, like, she finds the arrows because she's, like, running through the forest, and she finds where he landed, and she finds arrows on the ground, and she, like, breaks them in half to use them as, like, knives. And it's really fucking cool because she, like, sneaks up behind this dude, and she slashes his throat, and then she, like, winnows to the next one, kills him, winnows to the next one, kills him, winnows to the next one, kills him, kills them all. And then she finds Rhys, and he's chained to the wall with these, like, spelled chains, that she knows are used by Hybern because Amarantha had some under the mountain. So she releases him, and she realizes he's been poisoned, and she's like, I don't know how to fucking save him. So she catches the Suriel again. And the Suriel's like, you have to let him, he's like, the cure is in the forest, and he's being all cryptic and shit. So he tells her that she has to let him drink her blood, and also letting him drink her blood because it has the healing powers from the High Lord of Dawn. And also, if you get this one plant and make him eat it too, that will speed up the healing process. Also, Rhys-Sand's your mate, and he's known for like a long time. So she's really pissed. And she's like, she brings him back, and she's like, take me back to the Illyrian camp. And he's like, fine, I will. So they get back there. He winnows them there. He collapses outside the building. Mor and Cassian run outside of the building. And like Cassian looks at her, sees that she's fine, runs straight to Rhys. Morgan like stops at her and she's like, take me somewhere. And she's like, where do you want to go? And she's like, away from his motherfucking ass. Because like he's been playing with me and we've had a couple kisses and we spent the night in that bed together and I know how I feel about him and I think he knows I know how he feels about me, but he's known that we've been mates and I don't want to talk to his motherfucking ass. Take me away. So she takes her to this cabin that they all used to use, and she spends the whole week like painting, and she paints little pieces of all of the people in the little inner circle. So Rhys comes. Do I have it written down? I don't. Oh yeah, that one. It's really funny because at one point, Morgan drops her off and then she goes to come back and bring her food. She knocks on the door and she's like, please don't be dead. She knocks on the door and Feyre's like staring at the door. She's like, who the fuck is at the door? And Morgan's like, please don't be dead. I brought you food. And it's really funny. So Rhys comes and they reconcile and Rhys explains the mating bond to her and how like to complete the mating bond, I mean they fuck. But also she's like, well, I'm hungry, are you hungry? And she starts to make food and he's looking at her weird and she's like, why are you looking at me weird? He's like, it's like a really important thing when the female of the mating bond offers the male food and then the male eats it, like it completes the bond. It's like a very serious thing to be fed by your mate. And she's like, well, how about this? I'll heat this up and I'll think about accepting the mating bond. And then if I feed you after I'm done, then you got your answer. So he tells her his whole entire life story, including knowing that they were mates from before she even returned to the spring court after their time under the mountain, and that he had been dreaming of her years before then, that he had gotten glimpses of little things like the flowers that she painted on their little hovel, the table in their little hovel, and all kinds of shit like that. And she tells him about how at some point she told him that she had seen images of Valaris before, and he was like, I didn't send you those, I sent you music. That's what it was. When she was under the mountain and she was really close to giving up, he, through the bond, sent her like beautiful music. Well, when she received the beautiful music through the bond, she also saw Valaris, and he was like, I don't understand, I never sent you that before. I didn't do that. I just sent you like the music. And then you learn that when he started getting images and dreaming of his mate, he realized that his mate was human, so he would, every time that he saw her, like a hand or anything, that he would send her images of Valaris. And it just waited until like they were near each other for her to receive those in her brain. Like she had to be close. Apparently the proximity needed to be closer. I don't know. So they hear back from the Mortal Queens, and so that's why he came, because he's like, oh, by the way, now that we're done fucking and everything, the Mortal Queens have responded. We need to go. So they go back to the Mortal Lands, and even after seeing the truth of Valaris, the queens still refuse to give them the other half of the book. They leave, but one queen had snuck the book away and left it for them to find. Before returning home, Cassian vows to protect Feyre's sisters, even if their mortal leaders abandon them. it's like a very serious like Illyrians don't make vows unless they intend to keep them. And breaking a vow for an Illyrian like Cassian is very, very awful and like not gonna happen. So they go back home and Amryn decodes the books and they're but then one day they're like hanging out and her and Cassian are Valaris is hard to explain, but they're like on a bridge over some water stuff. And they see something in the distance. And Valaris is protected by so many magical enchantments. So many. Like, it's been secret for 5,000 years. It's not just because you can't, like, see it on a map or something. It's because it's protected by magical enchantments. And they realize that what's coming is, like, a bunch of creatures like the Adder carrying Hybern soldiers. So the King of Hybern used the cauldron to blast through all of the enchantments. And Cassian's like, I need you to go back to the townhouse because I need to protect the people, and I can't protect the people if I'm protecting you. And she's like, fuck you, I'm gonna help. And so she like looks at the water and she's like, I know that I can do water things because I did it when I was at the summer court with Tarquin's power. So she creates motherfucking water wolves, bro. Water wolves. And she like has the water wolves chase down the Hybern soldiers. Oh, because she sees this one girl like protecting her storefront, not because of the stuff in her store, but because she had innocent people behind her. And she's like fighting off these Hybern soldiers who are like taunting her, and just being general dickheads. And so she like sends the water wolves after them. And then some of the creatures escape into the sky, and she turns her water wolves into like falcons and hawks and not ostriches because I don't think those fly. Other birds, other birds that can fly, and like sends her water birds after them to drown them from the inside out. And then she's like, she sees the Adder, and she's like, I can't fly, but I'm gonna get him. So she starts like winnowing through the sky after the Adder. And at that moment, I don't know where in the fuck Reese went. Reese went somewhere to do something. Did I even put on here where Reese went? Nope, I sure didn't. So Reese was somewhere, but he gets back close enough that he can yell at her through the mating bond. And he's like, where are you? And she was like, I'm busy. And he's like screaming at her through the mating bond, trying to find out where she's at because he's like, I need to protect her. And she's like, one track mind. She's going after the Adder. She's going to get him. So Reese is like yelling in her head and she's like, I can't focus. So she shuts her mental shields down. And Reese is like, she can feel like, it's so great. You can like, she can like feel him pounding against her mental shields. And she can hear like his muffled yelling voice because he's panicking. Because now he has no, like he can't sense her or anything. He can't find her. And now he can't hear her because she's locked everything down. And he's like, what am I going to do? So she goes up, she winnows up, she gets to the Adder. She like, I think she stabs him. I don't know. But then they're falling. And then she winnows. And then he splats on the ground. And it's a really good day. And everybody's happy that she killed the Adder. But, we're getting to the end. And then Mom will take you outside in just a minute. Few minutes. You gotta give me a few minutes. Just a few minutes. Just a few minutes. So, Reese returns and he puts the protective wards back in place. I wrote, water wolves, bro. Chills all over. Good lord. So, they decide that they're going to sneak into Hybern and nullify the cauldron because Amryn's like, there's a spell in here that can nullify the cauldron. So, Feyre must touch it and speak a spell, and it has to be Feyre because she was made. And it takes something that was made to unmake the cauldron. But things go wrong. So they get it's too easy. Everything seemed too easy. They're like, we have this perfect plan. Here's how it's gonna work. The boys go first, and they're like, Reese is like, I'll stay away because if I'm in there, they'll know about the mating bond. And so Cassian and Azrael are like winnowing in front of Moore and Feyre and like taking out guards and shit. And it just all goes really smooth. And then she like touches the cauldron and then she doesn't speak the words because the cauldron like takes control of her and it's a very terrible situation. And And so then they're like, all of a sudden there's like, the door opens and there's ominous footsteps and it's motherfucking Jurian. Like he's already been made. Um, and the king uses magic to bind them using their own magic. And he shoots Az with a freaking ash bolt because he's a jackass. And so it turns out that Tamlin sold them out, and he and Lucian are there as well as the Mortal Queens and Feyre's sisters who have been captured. And the King of Hybern and all of his shittiness, uses Elaine and Nesta to prove to the Mortal Queens that they can in fact become Fae too. He's like, we're gonna dunk them in the cauldron and turn them into Fae, and if they survive, then you'll know that you'll survive. But Tamlin and Lucian both seem alarmed and are like, what are you doing? This was not part of the deal. You said that we could have Feyre back. You were going to deal with them. You were going to give me Feyre back. You did not say anything about hurting her sisters. And he's like, fuck you. I wrote on here, it was Ianthe that gave their location away. Her goal is to get rid of the High Lords and allow the High Priestesses to rule. But I don't know if you know that in this book. Maybe you do. Maybe the King of Hybern tells them that. I don't know. Anyway, so they dunk the sisters. The sisters both fine. They come out Fae. And Feyre uses her magic to work cracks through the King of Hybern's shield so that everybody can winnow away. And then you don't witness this, but her and Rhys are having like a whole ass conversation through their mating bond. And she tells the King of Hybern that she wants him to break her mate bond with Rhys. She looks at Tamlin and she's like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I don't know what happened. Tamlin, blah, 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 blah. So the King of Hybern does a thing and he does break the bond that requires her to go and stay with him, which is painful. It hurts her and it hurts Rhys, but everybody thinks that what actually happened is that he snapped the mating bond, which is not what happened. But she like falls into Tamlin's arm and she's like, take me home, because Cassian's wings get eviscerated and Azriel's dying and they need to get out of there. So she does what she has to do. So the bargain that she must visit him once a month is gone, like I said, and their mental tie, but their mental tie and the mating bond remain. So she looks at Cassian and she's like, save them. So her friends, so like Rhys and Morgan grab the other two, grab Azriel and Cassian, Azriel and Cassian, and Elaine and Nesta, and they winnow out. They're like, back to the spring court, night court, back to the night court for me. And Tamlin and Lucian and Feyre are like, peace out, and they go back to the spring court. And Feyre goes to the spring court, but we're gonna pause for just a second because I wrote, fuck Tamlin, fuck the King of Hybern, fuck the Mortal Queens. I was so mad. I was so mad at all of them. But so they like you see Feyre go home with Tamlin, and then after that's done, she's like, I'm tired and I need to rest. So they take her back to the spring court and they like get her settled in and everything. And then it shifts back to the night court. And they winnow all the injured and shit into the injured and the girls into the townhouse. And Amren's like there waiting. She like falls to the ground and she starts like working on one of the boys. I think Azriel. I think she starts working on Azriel. And she looks at him and she says, where is she? He brought the boys and then Moore brings the girls. So she starts working on Az because he's the one that's like dying. And then Cassian's just like wants to be dying because his wings got ripped off or eviscerated or whatever. And it's so terrible because she's like, where is she? and he can't say anything. And then Morgan appears, and she looks at her, and she looks at the girls, and she looks back at, and Amren looks back at Reese, and he's like, where is she? And everybody's like, oh, fuck, she means where is Feyre? And so then he tells them, they're so mad. He tells them that the mating bond is still fine, that he can still communicate with her, and that the night before they went to Hybern, him and Feyre snuck away, and they went to a high priestess and had her become High Lady of the Night Court. Which is funny, because in the first book, Tamlin's like, there's no such thing as a High Lady. Because she's like, so, because she was naive. She was a human. So when they went to go get married, she was like, so does that mean that I'll be your High Lady because you're High Lord? And he's like, there's no High Ladies. Well, now she is. She's a motherfucking High Lady. So the book ends with Tamlin not realizing that he let the High Lady of the Night Court into his house, because they go and have a high priestess actually make her High Lady. So she is the legitimate High Lady of the Night Court. She has as much control as Reese does, as far as like over all of them. And let me tell you, I don't think you find out in the end of this book. You find out at the beginning of the next, that Cassian and Azriel are so pissed at Rhysand, because they're like, you should have told me before we went into Hybern that she was my High Lady, because I would have done more to protect her. Because then, Cassian's like, I feel like I didn't do enough. And I would have done more to protect her because she's my motherfucking High Lady, bro. But anyway, that is for another video. Thank you for joining me for this chaotic mess. I thought that someone was just going to lay here and be a good boy and not a giant nightmare half of the time. Thank you for being here. Make sure to like and comment and let me know your thoughts, how you felt about A Court of Mist and Fury, ACOMAF. I loved it way more than ACOTAR. I will probably never reread ACOTAR ever again. But I did listen to this one twice to like absorb everything. And I did listen to the third one twice to absorb everything that was happening. I need to read A Court of Silver Flames. And I don't know if I'm going to finish Frost and Starlight. It's just not holding my interest. But let me know your thoughts down below. Comments are wonderful. Like this video, or the opposite, downvote it, or thumbs down it, or whatever. Engagement's engagement. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.